So thank you very much for the warm introduction here. I'm just going to start my presentation. So Azure Fabric Data Lakehouse. So basically, yeah, you introduce me so I can so I can continue. I can skip this slide here. So the agenda today, we're going to talk about the lakehouse, what led to it, basically, because before that we had something else, and how we can use it in Fabric. So it's a natural evolution of the data lake and data warehouse. What we had basically before, we had the data warehouse, right? In the 1990s, 2000s. Data warehouse were in the database, so they were not very flexible in terms of structure here and data types, but they were well organized and very well performant. Now we needed something a bit more because not everything could fit into a database. So in the 2000, in the year 2000 here, we got the data lakes here. So the data lake were much more flexible than a database because you could store any type of files, right? Any type of data, any structure. We could store here. We could store here some videos or pictures, but it was very tough to consume, not easy to consume here. Here, so you can have any structure, but it's not very well at the time. It was not very well organized, and the quick performance were quite slow. So let's skip the slide. Okay, perfect. So this is why Microsoft and other partners, or other people like Databricks, or other companies, created what is called a data lakehouse. So data lakehouse combines both previous architecture, right? You have a data lake with the flexibility of a data lake, unlimited storage. Yeah, unlimited storage depends how much you pay, right? But you have unlimited storage, so you can let's say, yeah, you had a warehouse before that. Yeah, you were only able to keep the past 5 years of detailed data. Now with data lakehouse, it's just space, right? So it's limited by your storage account in Azure or Amazon or GCP. So and also it's easier to query with good performance too. So this is what uh, Databricks started to advertise in 2019, 2020, and Microsoft joined the movement here with Fabric. So the way we do it, right? So we build a data lake first, and then after that, once we analyze the data, we have what we want. We're going to create cleaner table, and we might after that at the end we can get a data warehouse because we have a data warehouse in Fabric too, right? So we cannot talk about Fabric without talking about OneLake. OneLake is like the OneDrive, but it's a repository for everything that we create. It contains your artifacts like the warehouse, lakehouse, custode database here for real time, your Power BI data sets, for example. And also it can grab your it can contains your data, right? So you have several choices, and we talk about that later in this presentation. But basically, OneLake is the central piece of Fabric. Fine. Okay. So it's also an open API, so you can connect to OneLake using other ADLS compatible application like Data Factory here, or Databricks or HD Insight. So you can connect using the DFS API, Data File Storage API, and of course you can connect using Fabric. So now let's talk about a bit more about the Fabric Lakehouse. So an overview of this, right? You might have seen this image before. So you have your data sources. I'm going to talk about the shortcut layer here. So basically, what it means is that you might say, I have my existing data lake. and I don't want to move the data to one lake. So I just want to access it from where it is. So we can do it with Fabric. We call it a shortcut. So we simply connect to that source. It might be in Amazon, S3. It might be any other ADLS Gen 2. And Microsoft is working to bring GCP on board. So Google Cloud on board. And then, so you have your shortcut here, and then you can use it directly from your Lakehouse. Or you can use, basically, you can copy your data into one lake. And then after that, you can consume it, right? Using, you would do some transformation using pipeline here, notebooks. I'm going to show you that later in the presentation here, or you can consume your data using Power BI with Direct Lake, which is pretty fast here. So it's the connection, it connects directly to the data lake, to one lake, I'm sorry. And then after that, you can also connect using SQL endpoint, so like a SQL Server database. So the architecture, right? We're talking about the medallion architecture. You will hear that often. So basically, we want to organize our lakehouse, right? So we're going to have the raw here. So basically, we take your data, and unless we're doing shortcuts, but we're going to accumulate the data in your bronze as it is, right? So basically, you have a video. We're going to copy the video. You have an image, like me. I'm in the healthcare industry. So we have DICOM images. So radio X-rays. I'm sorry. So X-rays images. We're going to store them as they are. Now, what will happen now is that the raw is basically, it might be the copy of your data that you have onto an on-prem database too. Now, here we're going to do some system cleanup, right? So we're going to check nulls, we're going to align data types. So we make sure that all the data that we have in the bronze, we can do some queries on top of it to do some analytics. Now, if we talk about the images or videos, we're going to get the metadata of these, right? If you have an image and an X-ray, we're going to take, okay, what is the patient name? And most of the time, we're going to mask his name and his name in his address, but we're going to get, okay, what is the diagnostic associated with that X-ray? And then we're going to get the metadata here and be able after that to do some analysis here. How many people have this disease or have this injury in that region, in a specific region? So we do that in the gold here. If it's a database, we're simply going to accumulate all the history in the bronze. Let's say that you have sales. You have sales for every day, or multiple times per day, you get data from your CRM or your ERP. So what we're going to do, we're going to make sure that we can query the data. So if you have multiple structures, we're going to organize them to make sure that we can do something with it. And then in the goal, we're going to do the standard data mart that we were doing in the past, right? So we're going to have your dimension, your fact tables, and we're going to be able to consume it using Power BI, or you can do data science with it too. Right, next. When we talk about data lake here, data lakehouse, or everything now that we have in Fabric, every tables that we have, we're using the Delta format. Delta format has been open source by Databricks in 2019. The Databricks started developing this format in 2017, but it's been open source in 2019. If you go to delta.io, you're going to find information about this old open source format. But basically, it's ACID transaction, right? Like we had with the database. So assertion level is there. scalable metadata handling. So it works into a distributed environment, schema enforcement, but at the same time you also have a dynamic schema if you want to. So automatically handle schema variation to present insertion of bad record during ingestion. So it's more ETL failure resilient. And also we can do time travel. Time traveling means that I want to see the snapshots of my data as it was the last time I loaded it. So if you load every hour, I want to see what my data looked like 2 hours ago. So I'm able to do it. I want to see how it looked like 2 days ago, because we want to do some audit on our data, or we want to inspect what happened. What is, we had a bad load, right? So we can say, you know what, let's restore my data as it was 2 hours ago, because the past 2 hours, the last load, the last two loads were not good. So we can create delta table and store the metadata in the delta lake. So or here our delta lake is one lake. We can use create table statement only. We cannot do alter table. It's optimized by Microsoft Fabric here, and data and metadata, everything is dropped when it's deleted when we do a drop table, like a regular table, basically. These are the best table to use for data consumption because they are optimized by Fabric. Talking about that, optimization, the Delta Lake, the Delta table performance with V orders. We can optimize the performance of the Delta table because Microsoft, what they are doing, basically, they are compressing the data even more, and they can cache it in one lake. So what will happen is that now the performance of it, the sorting increase time by 15%, but improve the conversion by up to 50%. It's the format that Power BI is using natively. This is why Direct Lake will be so performant with Delta tables. Yeah, and you see here, make Delta table 10 to 100 times faster than standard Parquet file. So this is why it's worth to use Delta tables. So the implementation, how are we going to do it, right? We're going, as I mentioned before, we explore data via files and folder. I'm going to show you that in my demo later. We can load the data here and to create manage table, which is Delta table here. So we have the choice. So I can right click on the file and load it to a table, and I can read write it using a notebook. Now a Lakehouse as a SQL endpoint so that we can consume using not only a notebook, but we can, and Spark or Python, but we can also use, we can query that SQL endpoint using Transact SQL. Basically, we have almost all the functions we have in the classic Transact SQL here. We can create schemas because the Delta table, the Delta Lake, or the data implementation in one lake, for now, they don't support schemas, but we can create schemas in the SQL endpoint. But we can also create store procedures here. But the thing is, everything is read-only. I cannot insert, I cannot update table here. I can only create views on top of it. I can have rows and column level security, but everything is read-only. If I want to do any modification to my data, I need to use a notebook, or I need to use the data factory engine that we have within Fabric. So rule level security, I was talking about that, right? Basically, we did it in Power BI before. We did it in SQL Server. So it's J has only access to his orders here, and ETA only have access to his orders. So it's impossible that J with rule level security will see ETA's data. And the rules are kept in the database. So the thing is now with Direct Lake, with Power BI, the problem we have with Power BI and rule level security is that you could set your rule level security in SQL Server or in Oracle. Any agent that you were using might be MySQL, any data sources. But most of the time, people were importing data in Power BI. The reason for that is that performance, because data with the direct query, when we were connecting from with Power BI to our data lake with Power Query, it was quite slow without direct query. And so it was quite slow. So now that we have the direct link, because of the V compression, as I showed you before, the performance are very good. And now I can create my rule level security in one lake instead of having it in my data sources and having another version of rule level security in Power BI. Because I don't import the data anymore, I'm connecting directly to the source. Yeah, let's do a demo. Discard, perfect. You go to here, perfect. Close a few things. Okay. So Fabric, basically, it's Power BI, right? If I go to, if I do come here, I have Fabric. So you see, this is the Fabric logo. It's going to log in. What I want to tell you, there are two versions of Fabric, two types of Fabrics, right? You have the, if I go to price, if I look at the pricing calculator here, we can say Fabric pay as you go here. So you can create your capacity. And the benefit of this is that it's in US here, right? If I use a F2, F4, if I'm going to talk about those capacities after. So if I do the, basically I'm a developer and just want to experiment, it's going to cost me $263 a month. If I do F8, it's going to cost me that right here. Now I have some choice. I can say, you know what? Let me pay as the 1 year reserve, right? So let me use a reserve instance. We only have 1 year, we don't have 3 years. But still, you have a rebate of something like 40% here, if not more, 40 to 50%, which is quite good. But you have also another option. You might say, you know what? I'm going to use it only $200 hours per month, right? It's almost the same price as a reserve instance in that case, but you have the flexibility. Like me, I have some clients that use the Lakehouse, the Fabric capacity, only 2 days per week. So when you think about that, it's let's say 10 hours per day, 2 days per week. We're talking about 40 hours, right? So it's pretty cheap. For F8, most of the time they use F4. So it's $30 a month, which is for them, right? So if I use 200 hours, so it's $150 a month. If you want to use Copilot, if you want to use the manage endpoint, right? Because it's new, we have it for the past few days. We need to have F64 capacity, which corresponds to Power BI Premium P1 capacity. We see the price is for 2 hours, for 200 hours. So for a month, for 20 days, that's 7.5 hours a day. It's $2,000, right? If I'm using it for the whole month here, so the price will be $8,000. But if I apply the 40% rebate, it's $5,000 a month. We have several choices. When we want to have a reserve instance, we need to talk with Microsoft, and they are going to create capacity for us, right? Now, if I go here, I can go in Azure and create a capacity, right? I would say, you know what? Let's create a resource.
Just a
And
question,
yeah, sure.
Christian.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I'm just trying to understand in terms of the costing.
yeah.
Is 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 that including storage or is it without the
No,
storage? Okay.
storage, you have it here. Okay.
All right.
So but storage is quite cheap.
Okay, yeah,
It
storage is different.
depending
Okay.
what you want to do, right? For 1 TB,
Mm-hmm.
it's $26 here. But
All
if
right.
you add on top of it the disaster recovery, so it's going to be $47, right? If I have the 1 day cash here, now it's $200. 1 day cash to make sure that my query return pretty fast. But $200 for 1 terabyte is not that expensive.
I think
Most
that's because
expensive the
I think
capacity.
that's because the cache will enable offline
Yeah.
view of the dashboards in case if someone's like traveling or something. Yeah.
Yeah, but the capacity has to work because you don't have access to your workspace if your capacity
Okay.
is not running. So you need to have your capacity up to access your workspace. Yeah, but still, yeah, we're talking about $26 per terabyte. It's not very expensive. That's why I didn't mention it much, but thank you for your question. It was a great one because it's very important. Because we might be surprised because when my capacity is off, I'm still paying for the storage. Yeah.
Interesting.
Right now, if I want to create it, I can go to Azure portal and I will simply create it, right? Microsoft Fabric. That's pretty straightforward. I give it a name. I choose a resource group. Here, I give it a name. This capacity. Let's see if it's used. And then must contain on, yeah. This is a rule that they have here. Right. PC. Yeah, perfect. So now I can choose my region. So because this is one thing that we couldn't do before. Now I can say East US or whatever. Let's keep for now in North Central US. And the capacity administrator, the person that can modify this capacity in the future has to be. It can be a guest user. It has to be in your company, in your enterprise. Here I can change
Also,
this.
one
Yeah, go ahead.
just so regarding the capacity units, yeah, does it vary according to the regions? Do you think they
Yes.
have more options in US as compared to
Not.
like Europe or any other region? Let's say they have Middle East region right now as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good question. I saw variations. The capacity, I think you have it almost everywhere. What would change sometimes is the price of it. If I go to West Central
Okay,
US,
okay. Yeah, that
you
makes
see?
sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you say you have 5,000 O2. Now you have 5,500.
Mm.
So this is what will change here. So, but me, since I use the North Central US here, it show me the basic, the default capacity is F64. If I'm creating capacity pay as you go, usually I want to have something a bit smaller, right? So
Mm.
I'm going to use this here. And if I remember well, I'm in, yeah, you see, I'm in Canadian price because I'm from Canada. So I select it, and then we can create tags here, and then we can review and create, right? So it creates in a few seconds. It's not very long to create, right? Submitting the appointment here, and while it's creating, we need to show you what I did before. So this is the one I'm using. Since I'm the capacity administrator, I can add other person here as being a capacity administrator too, right? So what I'm doing here, I can pause. Yeah, you see now it's done. So I can pause my capacity because when I'm not using it, I can pause it, or I can change the size anytime I want. So if I change the size, the price vary accordingly. There is a way with larger cap, and I did it before, that you can have a larger cap that start your capacity, let's say at 8 a.m. and stop it at 6 p.m. So you don't need to, because especially if you use something like F64, you might want to limit the time, right, to avoid too much cost. So it's you're able to, or you can say, you know what, me at 2 a.m. I have a big workload, so I want to scale up my capacity at 2 a.m. and scale it down back at 5 a.m. once my workload is done. Or during the day, I want to have F64. During the night, I don't have a lot of users connected to it. I'm going to use F8. So it's possible we can play with this capacity. Yeah. So now, talking about the capacity here, if you use Synapse before, this is how it's mapped, right? So Synapse, the DW100C at the time, it's hard to compare because we're not talking about the same VM, the same machine, right, underneath, but it tells you a bit how it works. So you need a F8, and if F64 would be DW100, 1000. If you work with Synapse before, it gives you a good idea. Yeah, now of how we can map the capacity with Synapse, because F2 F4 doesn't give us much, right? Information. If I go to Azure here and I say change size, it's going to give me 2 capacity units, right? So it's not much. I don't have much information on that. So this is why the price tell us how much capacity we have. But let's say it's tough to estimate because it depends on what you're going to do with it. So you have reports, capacity reports that comes with it's an application. Let me show you here.
I think it's very
Fabric.
interesting how you have to be very strategic about your decision here.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah, but
Yeah.
when you're in the cloud, right? Everything is like that, right? When you're in the cloud, you need to be careful because cloud is
It's
cheap.
getting more complex as new products coming,
Yeah.
you know.
Oh yeah.
A lot of services, lot of integrations going on, and everything has a specific price attached to
Oh
it.
yes. Yes, you're right. You see, I can install this capacity here. What is it? It's going to tell me the capacity metric app. It's going to tell me, I don't think, I'm not sure if I have it here. Let me go to my apps here. Apps. Install, but basically, yeah, it's Power BI Premium Capacity Matrix, but it's almost the same thing here. So what it gives me is, you see, Power BI. Let me check. Do I have the Fabric? I think I have it. Yes. Fabric capacity matrix. So it gives me how much compute I'm using and how much storage I'm using. Oh, yeah, it takes some time. Now it's going to refresh everything here. So it gives me over time how many CPU, yeah, how many CPU I use because I need to refresh this dashboard here. And it gives me also a lot of information here. So I can set an alert if I overpass my capacity at some point. I will set an alert, tell me, you know what, you're using too much capacity, you need to increase the capacity. So this is pretty interesting. They developed this app as part of Fabric, so it's very nice. Check if I have the other one here. Fabric is here. Capacity metrics. Yeah. Okay, let me go back to BI here. Right, so now let's talk about the Lakehouse. Okay. Oh yeah. One last thing about the capacity. The capacity is assigned to can be assigned to multiple workspaces. The way we do it, we come here, workspace setting, and it's in the premium here. And then I would say, assign me the Fabric capacity. Which one do you want, right? The one that is running. I have the CC Fabric for now, but I could use the new capacity I created. And what I can do here too, I can go to the Spark setting. And depending on if I want to manage my Spark environment, I'm going to show that to you after. So the starter pool are the fastest here because they are almost always running, except when you have a lower capacity like I have now. I have F2. So we have a lot of logging. We have a lot of settings here that we can use here. And You also have the Git integration. Not everything is Git compatible, but Microsoft is working on that. So you see, I created a lakehouse here, healthcare. I'm using it. And in that lakehouse, I have a notebook here. And let me show you. This is the SQL endpoint here of my lakehouse. Think about the lakehouse like a database, right? So I would have my bronze lakehouse. Like here, I have only my gold one, but I could have my bronze lakehouse. I could have my silver lakehouse. So it's like a database that you have into a single workspace. Schemas are supported because, but not in the lake house, right? Because here the SQL analytic one, but the lake house schemas are not supported because the Delta tables, the Delta Lake that Tabrix GA in 2019, they don't support schema. Microsoft is working to enable schemas throughout the Fabric objects like the lakehouse, the warehouse. Microsoft is working on that because I could now, if I want to have the bronze, silver, gold, I need to have 3 different databases if I want to separate my my workloads. Right now, with schemas, I could have a bronze schema, I could have a silver schema, and a gold schema, like a traditional database. So you see here, I have my employers, I have my facilities. So I have my star schema here. Now from here, I can say, you know what? Let's do a new SQL query. And we select star from dim facility and run a query. I can also, it's going to run. If I don't like this engine, right? I can say, you know what? Let me use Azure Data Studio. Yeah, okay, dim facility. Yeah, it's not it's case sensitive. Yeah, okay. So I can also use other tools like SQL Server Management Studio, Azure Data Studio, and I connect using this here. This this endpoint here. I get it from settings and I copy it. And I can connect using other tools. I'm not obligated to work into the browser. Now, this is the SQL endpoint. This is where I can create views, function. I can, and every query I'm doing, they are saving it in my query, in my queries here. If I want to share queries with others, I will simply move the query to share queries. So any user that has access to the Lakehouse will have access to my queries, to these queries here. Now, if I go to, now, this is the read-only. This is how I consume the data, right? I can also have a model here. Yeah, it's going to show up. This is my data set in Power BI here. So you see all my tables are here. I can link them. I can do, you see I link them all really here. So I can show my relationship. Now it's like if I was in Power BI. I can also do a new visual query here. And now for that, I need to drag some tables here. So dim treatment here, it's loading. And it allows me to do transformation like a Power Query on that table. You see, I can reduce the rows, I can transform the rows, I can say, you know what, let me transform it. I want to group by, replace value. I can view the SQL that is created from this. So it's like a wizard to do your transformation. So this is the SQL endpoint of my accounts. Now, if I want to do the real work, if I want to do something here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to my Lakehouse. This is where, this is my, I showed you the dining room before, which is the SQL endpoint. This is my kitchen now. This is where I'm going to prepare the meals. Loading the Lakehouse here. And I can open a notebook. I can create a new one, but I'm going to, yeah, if I create a new notebook here, right? So I'm going to create my notebook one day. Yeah. Right, fetching metadata, loading notebook. Right. So now I can add the lakehouse. Since I was in that lakehouse when my LKL lakehouse, my simple goal lakehouse, it already deduced that I wanted to use my lakehouse. Now we can have multiple languages. I have PySpark here. I can use Scala. I'm not a big fan of Scala. It's like Java. I can use SQL or I can use R. If I use here Python, I can simply say I want to see all the tables here. I'm going to drag it. It's going to create the code for me, right? So some code for me, and then I would just run it. It takes a few minutes to start the capacity. I can add another cell. And that's, you know what? This time I want to work in Spark SQL. Let's do the same thing here. Perfect. Here, and I come here, right? And then it's going to create my my gold facility using SQL now. If I use Scala, it's going to be the same thing. Don't know why this error message, because my lakehouse was already associated with another notebook. That's fine. Now let me go to Spark to Scala, and I drag a table. It's going to create the code for me. Then I can do my transformations after. I'm going to show you a notebook here that I created to load because we have dimensions, we have facts. So to load my data mart, I use this notebook here. Loading the notebook. Right. One day.
Yeah, so Christian,
Yeah.
really sorry to interrupt. You have already almost 7 more minutes to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Okay?
I'm finished. I'm just showing that. Thank you. Yeah, I look at
You're
the
welcome.
time here. Thank you. So you see, basically, this is a complete example of a notebook. I can share that with you guys if you want to, how we can create something pretty fast. One last thing I wanted to show you is this here. In my Lakehouse, I add files. Yeah. I only have a few sites after that, and I'm done. So okay, I have files, and in those files, once that thing is going to happen, always slower when you look at it. So if I look at my files here, they're going to appear here. Yeah. Working on it. Yeah. Okay. So you see, I can see, you know what? The claims here, right click, load data in Spark here, and or in Pandas. I have a few choices here. So let me just click here, because usually I have load to tables. Anyway, I don't know why it's not showing it here, but I can load it to a table. Basically, it's going to do the work for me. It's going to create those tables. All right, so this is the demo part of it. Let me go back to my presentation. Here, perfect. The demo is done. What are we going to use, right? What data engineering decision? Am I going to use Data Factory? I didn't show you Data Factory here, but it's a low code, no code here. Data Flow Gen 2, it's part of Data Factory, or I use Spark, which is code. But I have much more flexibility with the code than I have with Data Factory. Unfortunately, the Data Factory that we have here is not the same as the standalone Data Factory. They don't have the mapping data flows. So which were very performant, costly, but performant. So that, am I using a warehouse or a lakehouse? What are the differences between it, right? So a lakehouse, you can have schemas, but a warehouse, you have schema. It's like a database here. And the basic difference is here. Are you going to use SQL or are you going to use Spark to create your objects here? And multiple table transaction, you can have it with the data warehouse. You don't have it with the lakehouse. And transaction performance, yes, update for a few rows are good compared to a lakehouse. It's slower because it's not using the same engine. So let me just advance one slide. Perfect. To sum up, basically, data lakehouse, they combine the best of both worlds, I would say, because we can have the flexibility of a data lake and the performance of a data warehouse. And Fabric One Lake is you define all the personas like a data warehouse, Power BI developers. Everyone can work with it. There are many ways to load the interesting data in Lakehouse with Fabric, copy, shortcuts. I didn't show you shortcut, but you can basically create them and connect to your existing data lake. And Spark cluster are managed by Fabric, right? The capacity is managed by Fabric. So no need to estimate beforehand, but you have to be careful of the price. If I create F64, it might be very costly at the end of the month. Right? Are there any questions? If not, then
Yeah, I
thank
do
you very
have one
much.
question.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So I wanted to ask, what are the main challenges companies face while integrating traditional warehouse soft technologies with modern lake solutions, and how does Fabric Data Lakehouse address these challenges?
The challenge of integrating your data warehouse in the Fabric, this is what I showed you a notebook, right?
Mm,
So the challenges are basically it's a change. It's a culture. I would say if you did the data warehouse, right, and you use SSIS at the time or you use other ETL tool, now you need to adapt to basically a new way to transform your data using Spark, or you can still use Transact SQL with the data warehouse. But in the Lakehouse, basically you will use Spark to do your transaction, like Python I showed you before in my notebook or SQL. You can have some SQL there, but it's not the same SQL that Transact SQL in the notebook. It's mostly some SQL like MySQL instead of SQL Server. And I would say at the same time, yeah, when you if you are you talking about the warehouse on-prem or warehouse in the cloud?
On-prem warehouses.
Okay, on-prem, when you purchase your server, right, you want to use it as much as possible because you purchase your server because it cost you many $1,000s, right? So you want to use it as much as possible. In the cloud, it's different. In the cloud, you will see, you know what, I'm going to load my data, and if my user don't use my lakehouse or warehouse 24/7, now I'm going to save costs, as I mentioned before. I'm going to spin up my capacity at 8 a.m. or 6 a.m. and shut it down or reduce the capacity later. The main challenge basically is the cost. So the change in the way you're going to code, the approaches you're going to take, and the cost. The cost. You need to be careful about that. These are the
Uh,
main challenges because the
Challenges.
rest Microsoft is working on that with the rule level security, column level security. Yes, you have it now. But
Are there like
yeah, go ahead.
so are there any challenges in terms of migration? So let's say if there were models in SQL Server and SSR, SSIS, right?
Mhm.
And they're now moving into Fabric's environment because that's a huge change, obviously, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
The way they are going to be sort of transforming data, it's going to be a completely new process. Do you
Yes.
think there's going to be like there are some migrational challenges, or do they have to build it from scratch, or somewhere like go back a few steps as their models are, or is there any way?
If
Is
you
there
have
an approach?
now the approach is basically it depends what you have, right? If you have SSIS, The only way you can consume SSIS is to use the traditional data factory, right? The one that has been GA in 2018. So because you have the SSIS runtime there, so you can still run your SSIS, but you will run them in a VM in the cloud. Basically, the VM will be managed by data factory. But with Fabric, forget about that. SSIS is done, right? So now you need to rewrite your ETL. But I never saw one-to-one migration. Most of the time, when we migrate something from on-prem to the cloud, we want to enhance it, or there are some parts of my warehouse that I'm going to, okay, let's forget about it because it's too old. I'm going to archive those functionalities because we don't use them anymore. So the path to the migration, if you have a SQL, Transact SQL, it's easier than if you have your existing warehouse. But if you use SSIS or the ETL tool like Data Stage Informatica. But what you can do now with Data Factory, you can simply copy your data from on-prem to OneLake. And what Microsoft is working on, now we have it for Snowflake and SQL and Azure SQL, is the mirroring. So now you're going to be able to say, you know what, let me connect to my Azure SQL source, but it's going to create shortcuts, so it will not copy the data to OneLake. And Microsoft is working. I don't know when, but I know they are working to bring the mirroring with on-prem. I don't know if it's going to be this year, next year, in 2 years. I don't know, but they are working on that. So you're going to be able to connect to your existing warehouse on premises. They will probably start with SQL Server, and then you'll be able to see your data in Fabric in the cloud.
Thank you.
Does that answer? Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? No, I guess we're good.
Yep.
Thank you, guys. It was a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you so much, Christian,
Thank
for
you,
joining
Christian.
us.
My pleasure. Thank you. Have a
It
good
was a
day.
great session, by the way. Good day.
Thank you.